This podcast is brought to you by the Islamic Center and NYU. For more information, visit our website at www.icnyu.org.
All right, so today's topic is, I wanted to, utilize this time today to talk about how we can end Ramadan with Ihsan, right? How we can finish strong. It's the last couple of days of Ramadan, and it's very easy to get to this point and just be like, okay, it's over, right? To feel like whether you started off on a strong note and the first part was like really strong, and then you got, it kind of switched and now you're like not doing as much, or you feel like you haven't done as much all month, and now it's like the last 2 days and you're feeling like, well, what's the point of trying at this point? And so I wanted to talk to you guys about the power of just finishing strong, right? And this is something that is emphasized in our faith, the concept of what you end upon. Right, we're taught in Islam to say the dua of, "Oh Allah, please make the last of my deeds the best of my deeds." Why are we taught to say that in our tradition? That that for Allah to help us have a good ending, to make our last deeds before we meet Him the best of our deeds, because there is a truth in how you end a path. Right, it's not. Your truth reveals itself. Whatever truth is in your heart reveals itself, not at the beginning of the path when there's motivation. No, it's at the end of the path, at the end of any path. And I always like to, compare this to like greatest athletes, right? And if you look at like athletes and the best athletes, and what defines, the best athlete in a sport is just their ethic, right? Their work ethic, how consistent they are, how they show up for the sport that they're devoted to. And remember last week we talked about what worship was, right? And we said that worship, everyone worships something, and it's the ultimate what? Devotion. So everyone's devoted to something. And so what's fascinating to me, is when you look at people who love like a certain sport and how devoted they are to that sport, you see how they like to finish strong. The best athletes, take Kobe, for example, right? His last game, how many points did he score? 60 points, right? Which is pretty high, right? Higher than his usual. And he got his, he also got the winning shot, right? Within 30 something seconds of the game. So till the last minute, what was he doing? He was not giving up. It's his last game. He could have just been like, all right, I'm already the best, right? I already did the best. I could just chill. What do we do in senior year of high school? They call it what? Senioritis. Okay, you made it, you made it to senior year, just chill. And it's almost like accepted, right? But no, when someone's devoted to something, they don't want to just chill in the last quarter. They want to finish strong, because the truth of your devotion comes up in that last quarter. The truth of your devotion to anything comes up when you're tired, when you've already worked hard, when you've already, gone already a long stretch. That's when the truth of your claim becomes a reality. We know that as Muslims, not everyone who has claimed Ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah in this world is going to easily say it when they're dying, right? It's only gonna come easy to the tongue for those who lived by that truth, and who that truth was not just a claim. It was their devotion, right? And so it's how we end something that really shows our sincerity, that really shows the truth of what we claim to believe in. And I want to ask you this: do we worship Allah or do we worship Ramadan? Right? We don't worship Ramadan. We worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where we really see, like, especially in these last few days and then after Ramadan ends, like we really see what we are seeking. Are we just seeking Ramadan because it's Ramadan, or are we seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're concerned about how we're going to continue seeking Him after Ramadan? After Ramadan, do we just say give up on everything we've been doing just because it's over? Or do we say, no, Ramadan was a gift and I'm still seeking Allah and I don't want to lose that, right? So we have to be conscious and really be connected to the power of these final days. Allah's giving you the opportunity to show your sincerity. Allah's giving you the opportunity to show up for the truth of your claim. Allah's giving you the opportunity to be a great servant by being devoted to the last quarter, to the last second, right? So you could also have that winning shot. Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, he said, when the racehorse knows that it's nearing the end of the track, it exerts all its efforts to win the race. Do not allow the racehorse to be more clever than you. For verily, deeds are judged by their conclusions. So if you didn't do well with welcoming Ramadan, then perhaps you will do better bidding it farewell. So if you didn't feel like you welcomed Ramadan on such a strong point, if you feel like you didn't embrace Ramadan as maybe you usually have in the past, or maybe, you know, this year was just difficult, you didn't know how to welcome it the way that you wanted to, the way that maybe you're comparing yourself to other people, maybe you feel like you're not doing as much, it's okay. Now is the time for you to make sure that your bidding farewell of Ramadan is powerful. It's strong. You're going to finish on that note. Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he says that Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he said that the lesson lies in perfection of the conclusion of a thing, not the shortcomings of the beginning of it. So it's how, you know, you really pursue that excellence in that last part of a journey, not in the shortcomings of the beginning of it. So we could sit there and focus on, you know, how much we messed up, or how much we didn't do the first, you know, 2 parts of Ramadan, the first, you know, all these days of Ramadan, or we can sit and say, how can I end it with excellence? And that's why the topic today is ending Ramadan with Ihsan, because that's what Ihsan is. It's the pursuit of excellence, not perfection, excellence, meaning you want to make sure that you refine your acts of worship. You want to make sure that you're taking it to the next level. You want to make sure that your relationship with Allah is continuously, you're continuously putting that effort to bring it to that next level, to bring it to that level of excellence. Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he says, improve your performance in what is left, basically, of time, and you will be forgiven for that which has already passed. So take special care of the time you have left, because you do not know when your soul will be turned over to Allah's mercy, right? And so we know from you know, Islam, and we know that if a person, for example, lived their entire life and they weren't, let's say, worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they weren't, you know, striving towards him, but then they decided to come back to Allah, they decided to sincerely worship him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to he's a shakur, right? He's going to acknowledge how that person ended upon what he ended upon. That's going to matter more than, you know, his life of not, you know, worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to understand that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how we end upon something is so important to him. And it's so powerful. And so even just outside of Ramadan, even if up to this point you haven't been where you are at with Allah, know that if Allah gave you life today and he gave you the opportunity today, that means that he still wants for you a good ending, that he sees potential in you, and he's giving you time to renew that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I want to, you know, remind us today to really think about how we can end, you know, these last couple of days. I know that you know, Iftar is a few minutes away, and we have basically tomorrow and Sunday, right? But these 2 days, we can end them with excellence. We can bid farewell to Ramadan with excellence. We can show gratitude for Ramadan with excellence. How do we show gratitude for something? We show gratitude for something by maximizing the use of that thing. Right? If Allah subhanahu, if a friend of yours gave you a blessing, a gift, right? And she came to your house and she gave you a gift, and you said thank you, and then you put it to the side, is that really gratitude? If she came back and she saw that gift was just sitting there, it wasn't opened, it wasn't utilized, would she really think that you were grateful for that gift, even though you claimed to be? Right? And so it's not gratitude when we're not maximizing the blessing we have. So if we haven't felt that gratitude for Ramadan, we could still express it and feel it and communicate it and show up for it through our actions in these last 2 days. We can still show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our intent to renew with him, because that's what we have to do anyway throughout our lives. It's not just in Ramadan. This shows us that even if I had a day that wasn't good, 70% of it. No, I want to end my day on a good day. We're trying to cultivate the muscle of always finishing strong, whether it's a day in your life, a week in your life, a month in your life, or Ramadan itself, right? And then of course, your entire lifetime. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us have a good ending, right? And make the last of our deeds the best of our deeds. But we want to cultivate this mindset, right? This approach to how we finish something. A lot of times what we do is we self-sabotage, right? If we have been making progress and then we mess up one little thing, what do people do? They say, oh, what's the point, right? Someone's been doing good on their eating healthy, and then they have a piece of cake. A lot of times people are like, oh, I messed up the day. I'll just forget it, right? We have this, a lot of people struggle with this self-sabotage, right? Where this one little thing makes them basically forget all the progress they made. So this is a time to be grateful for, also not just for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving you still 2 days left, because there are many people who did not witness the entire 30 days of Ramadan. There are many people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not allow to finish Ramadan. Right. So the fact that we are here and we still should not feel so guaranteed. We should always ask Allah, please help us complete the entire month of Ramadan. And so we're here. We should really take a moment to really feel that gratitude, not just to say it with our tongues, but to really feel it in our hearts. Ya Allah, you gave me 2 days left. Help me maximize it. Thank you for these 2 days. Please help me end with excellence. Please help me maximize these 2 days in a way that I didn't maximize any of the other days. And please accept them from me. Right. And so we want to approach it with this immense sense of gratitude that thank you, Ya Allah, I'm alive. And you have given me this opportunity, and I'm not going to minimize these 2 days, because these 2 days are also beloved to you, and I'm not going to minimize them. Right. So we want to first cultivate that mindset that the ending of a day, the ending of a month, the ending of this month of Ramadan matters. And so we're not going to just throw in the towel because we feel like maybe we didn't do enough. So the concept of Ihsan is something that, we're taught in Islam, and it's something that we're taught to worship Allah, with Ihsan, right? And so I want to just go over the definition of Ihsan. And so this is based upon the hadith where one day while the Prophet ﷺ was sitting in the company of some people, this is the hadith of Angel Jibreel, where he came and he sat down and not in his, of course, he didn't know if he was Angel Jibreel, but he came and he asked the Rasul ﷺ in the company of the Sahaba, he said, what is faith, right? And Allah's Messenger ﷺ replied, he said, faith is to believe in Allah, his angels, meeting with him, the apostles, and to believe in resurrection. Then he further asked, what is Islam? And Allah's Messenger ﷺ replied, to worship Allah alone and none else, to offer, I said, what is Islam, right? Yeah, what is Islam? Allah's Messenger ﷺ replied, to worship Allah alone and none else, to offer prayers perfectly, to pay the compulsory charity, and to observe fast during the months of Ramadan. And then he further asked, what is Ihsan? Which we know is the highest level, right? What is Ihsan? Which is excellence. Allah's Messenger ﷺ replied, to worship Allah as if you see him. And if you cannot achieve this state of devotion, then you must consider that he is looking at you, right? So when you are at the highest level of devotion to something, of course we cannot see Allah, right? But it is as if he's right there, right? We can see him, and not necessarily obviously with our physical eye, but your heart just sees Allah through everything. The spiritual eye, the eye of your heart, right? The eye of your heart is connected to Allah through everything. And so the concept here that I want to connect your heart to is that Ihsan is to, it says, the Rasul said, if you cannot achieve the state of devotion, right, then you must consider that he sees you. And even that alone, right? How many of us are connected to this throughout our day? As a psychologist, one of the things that I know of, from working with people over the years and from knowing the psychology of the human being is that we all love to be what? Seen and heard. That is a need of every human being. What are the two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we know of in the Quran that speak to this need? Yes. Yes, As-Sami' al-Basir, right? And Allah says As-Sami' al-Basir is the all-hearing, the all-seeing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala connects us to these two names throughout the Quran. Now, if you think about, we know on a psychological power, the power of, someone feeling seen and heard by those they love. Someone feeling that their pain is seen, their joy is seen, their feelings are seen, who they are as a person is seen, right? The truth of who they are is seen. There's so much freedom in that. There's so much, mental health benefits in that. There's so many holistic benefits in a person feeling heard and seen in a marriage, in a friendship, in any relationship, right? In a community, right? When you walk into a community space and you feel like you're heard and seen, isn't that powerful? So then imagine if that's the kind of power we feel when we feel heard and seen by the creation. Imagine then the kind of benefit, the kind of psychological, spiritual, holistic benefit that we can experience when we feel seen and heard by our creator. How do you imagine you'd feel? Amazing, right? If you're connected, and it's not your friend, it's not your husband, it's not your, spouse, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the creator. It's Rabb al-Alameen. It's the source of everything. He has an infinite supply of everything you need, right? He's the source of everything that you're asking for. Imagine then walking this earth, knowing and being so connected to this truth that you are seen and heard by your creator, by the creator of everyone else that you're longing to be seen and heard by. There's such a power in that. It's what makes you more present. It's what makes you more mindful. It's what makes you more connected to everything you're doing. It's what makes you feel like you matter and everything that you do matters. People always want to be appreciated, right? They want to feel like their efforts are appreciated. One of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ash-Shakur, the most appreciative. Isn't that, think about this, that Allah has named himself the most appreciative. What does that mean? You take one little step close to him, he takes many steps close to you. You take a hand, this is from Hadith Qudsi, if my servant takes a hand's length closer to me, right? Then, comes close to me by a hand's length, I go closer to him by what? An arm's length. If he comes to me walking, my servant comes to me walking, I go to him running. This is who you're dealing with. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most appreciative, who he does he doesn't negate any little thing you do on your path to him. He doesn't negate any good you do. Nothing you do is lost in vain. He doesn't negate that tear you dropped is in trying to connect to him. He doesn't negate those few words that you made in dua. He doesn't negate you getting up to pray even though you don't feel like it. He doesn't negate or minimize those moments where you're tired, you're exhausted, you're at the end of Ramadan and you're fasting. He doesn't negate this. He doesn't minimize this. People may minimize your efforts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a shakur. He doesn't minimize our efforts. In fact, he will always come closer to us, far closer than we go to him. He will always give us more than what we give. He's a shakur. So now imagine you're being seen and heard by him. And so when we live with ihsan and we want to live a life with ihsan, with excellence, in pursuit of this excellence, where we want to live sincerely, we want to make sure we're showing up powerfully, we're showing Allah that we're showing up sincerely for what we claim to believe. Because that's what authenticity is, right? Authenticity is you living in line with what you claim to believe. Your actions and what you claim to believe line up. And we know from the Quran, I know authenticity is like a big popular word, but what is the opposite of that? I think I mentioned this before in a previous class, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us about in the Quran of being what? Hypocrites, right? And I know that's such a strong word. And when we hear that, we're like, oh my gosh, of course, none of us want to be hypocrites, right? But if you think about it, being a hypocrite is the opposite of being authentic. Because a hypocrite is just one who his actions or her actions do not line up with what they claim to believe, right? And so this path is a path of bridging that gap between what we claim to believe and what we actually do, so that there isn't a gap, there isn't a conflict. And so part of finishing strong is part of that authenticity, is part of bridging that gap between what we claim to believe, that, yeah, I care about Ramadan, I love Ramadan, I'm so grateful for Ramadan, but then last 2 days of Ramadan are here and you're just like, oh, forget it, I already messed up. right? So we can take these little steps, even in these last 2 days, to bridge that gap between what we claim to believe and how we actually show up. And that's what makes us more sincere human beings and more authentic people who don't have this conflict between what we present outwardly and what we speak to ourselves inwardly, right? And so that produces more harmony within the human being, right? It's for you. Allah does not benefit from your ihsan. Allah does not take anything from you being authentic. You're the one who gets to walk this earth feeling more grounded, more in line, more authentic, more truthful. You get to feel the psychological and spiritual benefits of these things. And so ihsan is to be connected constantly to the fact that Allah is with you and sees you in every moment, right? The good you do, the mistake you made, right? And to constantly have that sensitivity to that. And so first thing we have to remember when we're trying to worship Allah with ihsan is that we need Allah to worship Him. So a lot of times when we start the path of getting closer to Allah, or we want to do something to bring ourselves, to empower ourselves, or to improve any aspect of our lives, we forget we need Allah. We're like, okay, I got this. Allah gives us a test and we're like, okay, I got this. No, He didn't give you the test so you can like get this on your own. No, He gave you the test so you can see Him through the test. And so in these last 2 days, I encourage you all to ask for Allah's help to help you finish strong. We need Allah's help to worship Him with presence and excellence. And this is a dua that the Rasul, this is something that is taught to us by our Prophet ﷺ, a dua that we're taught to say at the end of every prayer, which is Allahumma inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husna ibadatak, right? Oh Allah, I ask for your help, or assist me in remembering you, in thanking you and being grateful to you, and in worshiping you, right? In the best of manners or with excellence. And so this is a dua that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught to Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. And this is after he told him, I love you. So this is a dua that he taught him after he expressed his love for Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. So he said, oh Mu'adh, by Allah, I love you and I advise you, oh Mu'adh, never forget to recite this after every prayer. So this is something that he has taught to someone that he truly loves. And so this teaches us to also pass it on to those we love, right? To those we claim we love, we should teach them to also say this dua after every prayer. Because what more beautiful, what greater dua to make, right? To always ask Allah for help in worshiping Him. Like, we're not meant to do it alone. You want to be grateful to Allah, ask Him for your help, for His help. You want to worship Him with excellence, ask Him for His help, right? And so He never expected you to do it alone. In fact, He wants to help us, right? So how can we cultivate ihsan? First, we have to be present with ourselves and with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't cultivate ihsan and end a path strongly and presently and with excellence when you're disconnected from yourself and you're disconnected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So first, let's talk about cultivating presence with ourselves. Check in with your heart, number one. How is your heart? How many of us take the time to really check in and see how our heart is feeling? Is my heart constricted? Is my heart open? What is the state of my heart? Am I at peace? Is it content? And so that's where we start. We turn inward. We don't start by going outward. Oh, you know what? If I get that prayer mat, then I'll really worship Allah with ihsan. No. You have what you need, right? Like, you turn inward and check in with your heart. What do you need internally? And mindfulness is so important, because being aware of our inner experiences without judgment, that's what mindfulness is that you're being a witness to your inner experiences, your thoughts, your emotions, without placing judgment, without saying, oh, this is bad, or this is wrong, or this, you're just witnessing it. And the beautiful thing about that is when you build the muscle of doing that, when you can hold a space for yourself, hold a space for you to feel what you feel, you're more capable of taking that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because when you do not place judgment on yourself, you have lesser shame that comes up. So you're able to really look at it from the outside and say, okay, this is what I feel. And this is how I'm feeling right now in these last couple of days. Let me take that to Allah. I feel defeated. Let me take that to Allah. I feel not, oh, I feel defeated. What does that say about me? I feel, I messed up. What does that say about me? No, you don't want to place judgment. This is how you feel. This is the truth of how you feel. Know it, identify it, but then take it to Allah. You're not the destination. Take it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So the key here is to be reflective, right? And responsive, but not reactive. We want to reflect. We want to know, okay, we want to have an honest account, right? We want to be truthful with ourselves. How was my Ramadan? What is something that I can do in these last couple of days that I'm capable of doing? And really making sure that you're reflecting so that you can respond effectively, not be reactive. When we don't reflect, we end up being reactive because we feel something difficult and we're like, oh my God, I messed up the entire Ramadan. A reaction is forget it. I'm just going to check out. That's a reaction, right? Because it's an immediate kind of response to you feeling some kind of difficult emotions. Whereas when you're present and you're mindful, you're an explorer. You're like, okay, what is going on? What am I feeling? And how can I use this as the means to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not the end? So, and presence with, presence with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, being truthful. Number one, when you're truthful with yourself, you can be more truthful with Allah. But if we're lying to ourselves, we're not going to, if you're lying to yourself, what are you going to take to Allah? A lie, right? So first, be honest with yourself and then be honest with Allah, with whatever you discover. Presence when you speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ihsan is really living, knowing, and being connected to the fact that Allah sees me in every moment. And so when we speak to him, if you are sitting in front of a human being, right, and you are speaking to them and they know you're not present, if they're speaking to you and they know you're not present, that would bother them, right? It's just the basic etiquette, just for even a human being, is to be present with them when they speak. And any human being would get irritated, right, when they feel like they're speaking to someone who's not really there, who's just like, and so who is more deserving of our respect than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So part of worshiping him with excellence is even in these little moments when you're making dua. It's not, as my teacher used to say, it's not lip service, right? Like, be conscious of what you're saying, be connected to what you're saying. So when you're making dua in these last couple of days, really just the little moments, guys, really, it's not about doing big things. It's about doing small things rooted in great intentions and great presence. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is appreciative of that quality, right? Those quality acts of worship. Not to say, I don't want anyone hearing me to say, well, I bet it's better to do quality it's better to do nothing at all. Wait, am I saying this wrong? Meaning like, I'm just not going to do it at all if there's no quality. No, of course we should continue striving, but we should, have that effort put into place where we want to continue working on our presence, on our quality, and our quality of our acts of worship. And so presence when you speak to God, but also presence when God speaks to you, when you're reading his book, right? Those are his words. He's speaking to you, your heart. Do you read it? Do you read the Quran as if Allah is speaking to you directly? A lot of times people, when they read the Quran, they're reading it as if it's like advice for the past, for the people of the past, or the Rasul, or just for the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How many of us read it when we open the book? We read it as if Allah, I'm ready, Allah, like, speak to me. So, how do you read the Quran? How do you approach the Quran? And then presence with Allah, through what you say and do. Muraqabah is, we say it's like a higher level of mindfulness, where mindfulness is about you being watchful of your inner state, right? And muraqabah, which is a concept in tazkiyah and tasawwuf, it's not just about you being watchful. It's knowing that Allah is watchful over you and your inner state and the shifts of your heart and your pain and your emotions and your thoughts and all of that. And so it plays a lot into ihsan, because it helps us stay connected to Allah seeing us. And so it's the concept of muraqabah it comes from, the meaning of to watch, to observe, to regard attentively. And Ibn Qayyim, he has a chapter on muraqabah where he says muraqabah is to be devoted to the names of the watcher al-Raqib. So muraqabah is another form of the word ar-raqib, which is a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the watcher, the one who watches, who sees, who observes, who doesn't miss a thing, right? And so this inner world of yours is not something that Allah is not unaware of. He knows every shift in your heart. He knows every pain. It also is devoted, part of practicing muraqabah is being devoted to the name of Allah. That's the guardian, al-Hafid, the knowing, the one who knows, the one al-Alim, right? The one who is all knowing. The hearing, we mentioned this, as-Sami' al-Basir, right? And Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah says, whoever understands these names and is devoted to fulfilling them will acquire muraqabah. Being connected to your intentions. So in these last couple of days, again, it's not about doing big things. It's about doing quality actions, but root them in great intentions. Whether you're cooking for your family or you're going to work or whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that you intend for the sake of Allah, right? That you bridge what you're doing to connect it to your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That as you're doing that action, you're connected to Allah sees me as I'm doing this. Allah sees me as I'm, about to do this good deed. Allah sees me as I am fasting and I'm hungry. Ar-Raqib, he's watchful over me. He sees that I'm fasting and I feel the pains of hunger. He sees that I'm fasting or I'm struggling, or he sees everything that you're going through. So in these last, couple of days, I try really being connected to even the intentions behind the smallest thing you do. When you go meet a friend, right? It's such a beautiful thing to go meet a friend and to meet them with the intention of going to meet them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That actually we know that there are 7 types of people who are shaded on the day of judgment, that one of the 7 types are those who come together to meet for the sake of Allah, right? So when you go meet someone, you can make that intention, and you connect, ya Allah, you see me as I'm going to see, my friend, and I know this is beloved to you, for me to go and bringing joy to people's lives is the most powerful thing we can do as Muslims, right? Bringing joy, meeting people beautifully, meeting them with ihsan, with excellence, right? With a smile on our face, and just really being present with other people and trying to bring good to the world in any form or capacity, right? You have the opportunity to root that in great intentions. And then presence in our acts of worship, right? So in these last 2 days, as you're praying your 5 prayers, think about the grandness of your meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine you can end Ramadan with praying with excellence, right? That, okay, in these last 2 days, I'm going to make sure that I pray on time. Okay, even if I didn't pray on time all Ramadan, I'm going to make sure that once the adhan comes on, I'm going to get up and pray. Or, I'm going to make sure that once the prayer ends, I'm not going to get up and leave right away. No, I'm going to worship Allah with ihsan today. And I want you to think about it. You ever watch old movies when you see people enter the court of a king and they go and ask for something? How do they walk out when they finish asking the king? How do they walk out? Do they just turn around and walk out? They walk backwards, right? Out of respect, right? Because it feels a little to them, it feels a little grimy to ask the king for something and be like, okay, bye, it's out of reverence. It's out of thank you, So I remember I attended a retreat one time. It was a Tazkiyah retreat, and the teacher, he saw that after we prayed, we got up, and a lot of people would get up and would get up after the prayer, and he would say, no, sit, and I remember reflecting upon this. And that's when I was thinking about the court of a king. I like to compare our relationship with Allah first, I like to start off with our relationship with humans and how I see it, because then that helps me understand, okay, well then Allah is greater, So that's what helped me understand why he took that so seriously. No, you don't get up after you pray right away like that. So sit, be still, be present. And so we pray, we have a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's what it is when you're reading the Fatiha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to every verse. And then after the prayer, we make dua, and then we're okay, but even just sitting for a few minutes with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one you just had a conversation with, the one you just had a meeting with, don't just even that extra minute that you wait on the prayer mat, it does something to your heart. Because you're still, you're present, you're saying, no, I'm not ready to leave you, ya Allah. You know, I want to be still with you a little bit more. It's the little moments. It's the little moments in our day where we take the time to remember Allah sees me, where we take the time to, no, I'm not going to just mindlessly do this action. I'm going to do it for the sake of Allah. And then, you know, dhikr, right? Dhikr is such a simple form that we can do, especially with our masks, right? No one's going to think we're talking to ourselves, right? Like, you know, it's one of the benefits of the masks is that you could sit there and just, you know, say istighfar on your, you know, on your way home, on your way to school, on your way to work, like just increase in dhikr, you know, and remember the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Adhkuruni adhkurukum," right? Remember me, I'll remember you. And so when you are practicing dhikr, you're remembering Allah, you're remembering your creator, you're being present with him. And so this is last 2 days, try to increase in that. And one of the most powerful things that I want to also just end upon is do good deeds that nobody knows about, not a soul, especially these last 2 days, if you haven't done so already. I feel like I really believe that one of the fastest ways that we can gain sincerity and closeness to Allah is when we do something good and we don't want to tell anyone but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning like we don't want anyone else to know but Allah. That creates a sense of closeness to Allah that is so great because it's like he's the only one that saw this good action. The only record of it is the record that the angels wrote down, right? It detaches you, it frees you from constantly needing, you know, like seeing worth in your action only when it's seen by others. And especially in the world we live in today, where, you know, what's the saying? It's like, it didn't happen unless it's like posted or something. I ruin phrases, but like, right. That's like a thing, right? So like, yeah, right. It's like the world we live in, you know, it's like, did it really happen if I didn't post about it, you know? And it's a phrase because that's what's going on in people's minds nowadays. It's like there's this growing and increasing belief nowadays and like this thought that, you know, it doesn't matter until it's like out there for other people to see. And this is a spiritual killer. It really is, because people are not meant to see everything. And when you do good, when it's just between you and Allah, it benefits you a lot more, right? I'm not saying to never share the good that you do, right? It depends on your intention, again. But if you never leave anything that just between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how are you going to build a close relationship with him? If you think about even just in relationships, right? You know, if a husband buys something for his wife and then the second he's like, okay, I got to post about it that I got you these flowers, you know, like how would the wife feel, right? Or vice versa, right? Like, oh, you know, I did this nice thing for you. Okay, 1 second, you know, guys, look, you know, I did this for my husband, right? It's like, but just think about it, right? Like as human beings, we don't like certain things, but yet we do it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when there are even just things that are just between, you know, spouses or friends or in any relationship, right? Like when there's something that fosters that closeness when you know that that's just between me and that person, right? Now with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not only that it fosters that love, but Allah gives you so much more in the process because you're showing that sincerity, that ikhlas. What is more pleasing to Allah than you showing that He is your priority? So just to summarize, you know, take the time to increase in your dhikr. First, to renew your mindset that these last 2 days are not minimal, that this is your opportunity to finish strong, to finish truthfully, to finish with presence, right? To show the truth of your claim. And then, you know, and to engage in these in quality, right? Like if I'm going to pray, I'm going to make sure it's my best prayer. If I'm going to, you know, if I hear that, then I'm going to get up and go to my prayer. I'm going to increase in dhikr. If I do an action, I'm going to root it in a huge, great intention. I'm going to think of all the ways in which this action is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to be connected to the fact that Allah sees me as I'm doing this action. And then if you can, you know, please, I want you to try it and you know, okay, don't come tell me because that backfires it, right? Don't tell me what you did, but just like, you know, tell me how you felt, right? Or share with others, you know, like what the benefit was. You don't have to share your good deed because that's going to ruin that's going to ruin the point. But, just, it's good to, to be connected to what you feel after you do something like that, because it makes you want to do it again. You're like, wow, I really love that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that I did this good deed for somebody and nobody else knows. It creates a freedom within you that you want to taste again and again and again. And I will wrap up here. Jazakumullah khair. And I'll take do we have time for questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for your time, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us all. And, these last 2 days of Ramadan beautifully and, in a stronger way than we began, inshallah.
If you would like to listen to more, please donate to www.icnyu.org/donate. For more of our virtual programs, go to www.icnyu.org/classes. If you have any questions, email us at info@icnyu.org.